Hello, friends. My name is Julia, and today I am feeling particularly anxious in creating this video today. I think part of the reason for that is that this video has been in the back of my mind easily for the last 6 months or so. It's something that I've wanted to express and articulate and share with the world. However, there's also been this aspect of fear attached to it for me. And myself particularly, I really love expressing and finding joyful ways to express myself, but it's also something that I feel a lot of fear around, a lot of anxiety around at times, not always. And this topic specifically is very dear to my heart. And I think the reason that I've had such a hard time encouraging myself to actually create this video is because this does largely have to do with my purpose. This does largely have to do with how I want to serve in the world, what changes I want to make for myself and for hopefully whoever else feels inspired enough by this video. So maybe I'm putting too much pressure on myself, maybe it's just the right amount of pressure, but today seems like the right day to make this video because I've been telling myself last week and then this week that I was going to make a video. And this is the first one that's really coming to mind for me. And I think once I get this out of the way, things are going to go a lot more smoothly. So for those of you who don't know me, and even those of you who have watched a few of my videos before, I have been working as a coach, especially in the areas of health and relationships, and helping people to really create a loving relationship for themselves by improving their own health in terms of their physical body, their mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial aspects of themselves, so that they can better carry this higher vibration into a relationship that they hope to build a deep connection with someone. However, this wasn't always something that I have been doing with my life, and it's really been over the last, say, 8 months or so that I've been diving into this more clearly. And this came to me not exactly overnight, but it's something I've been sort of working at and tweaking. But it stemmed from an experience that I had with Bufo about 9 months or so ago. And for those of you who don't know what Bufo is, it is arguably one of the most powerful psychedelic medicines that exists in the world today. I would argue that there's one other, like iboga, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that's perhaps more powerful. But largely it is used to help people cure addictions. It's often described as giving people an experience of God, an experience of oneness, an experience of love. And I've worked with a number of different plant medicines before, whether it was like mushrooms or washuma or ayahuasca or bufo, hape, all in a ceremonial setting. I don't really, I'm not a proponent of just taking these plant medicines recreationally. I really think that if you want to get benefit from them, they should be in a setting where you feel safe and nurtured and loved, and as though the space is held for you, whether that's with yourself or one other person or with a group of people. But I'm really not a proponent of people just taking like even mushrooms sometimes and just going for an experience. Or I've heard of people doing ayahuasca and just going for like a walk down the street, or LSD or MDMA. Like they are all powerful medicines and they have a purpose, but I really want to encourage people to respect these medicines and have a solid intention when you actually use them, because they're not for everyone. And prior to taking Bufo, I may have had a different message, but it's important to respect the medicines that we use and to hold the right intention when we actually use them. Okay, so I'm just gonna gather myself here. Like I said, I'm feeling a little nervous today talking to you about this. And I've got an itch in my nose. Usually when I make these videos, sometimes I have little like cues for myself how to keep on track throughout the discussion or storytelling, if you will. But for the most part, I try to remain authentic. I just try to let things come to me as they come and see what kind of magic unfolds as a result of having that true authentic expression be released in that way. So I'm just going to get my center for a second here. Okay, so about 9 months ago, I was in Mexico and decided to participate in 2 nights of Bufo. And the first night, I had set the intention of experiencing unconditional love, just pure unconditional love. And I'll be honest, I don't fully remember the first night as clearly as I do the second, so I'm going to focus more on the second. But I know they had a very similar feeling to them and a very similar message. I know I had a very similar release in both of them. So the first night I had this intention of experiencing pure unconditional love, and after having received that message, I wanted to go, sorry, I don't know why my nose is so itchy right now. I wanted to go a little bit deeper and experience something similar, but I tweaked it a little bit, because I think the first night I said I wanted to experience unconditional love, and then the second night I said I wanted to experience pure unconditional love. So just to give myself an experience of love unlike I had ever experienced before. And at this time, I really had no idea what level of love I had been experiencing, or what I had been allowing myself to experience, what I was allowing into my life. I knew that I had some things that I was working on to improve my health, to improve some of my habits, but it wasn't until after I had this experience, this intention was set, that I really got that snap awareness of what I was actually allowing in my life. So I'm going to describe a little bit about what the Bufo experience was for me. And if you're someone that doesn't know too much about plant medicines, how you take it, that kind of thing, this isn't really what this video is going to be about. So if you want to know more of the details of like the form or how they extract it or all of that stuff, I'm sure you can find that somewhere else on YouTube. But for me, I'm just going to share my experience and what it was like for me and how my life changed as a result of that. So, like I said, I had this intention to experience unconditional, like pure unconditional love. And so I was in the ceremony and I took the Bufo, and all of a sudden I was blasted off into this like completely different realm. It kind of reminded me of these like waves of energy that I could feel kind of radiating from my body, but I could also see them very, very clearly in terms of color. So it was just these very like radiant colors, kind of like what you'd see in the 60s or I don't know, just some like hippie show or something like that. And I was very aware of the energy and these colors and this sensation, but it was like my body had completely disappeared. My body now was these colors. There was no more Julia, it was just the environment. And similarly to that, I also became very aware that my thoughts and also my breath was creating these colors. It was creating how fast they moved, how like calm they felt. And for me, initially getting kind of blasted into this other dimension, this other reality, it's very shocking to the system. And so initially I was kind of panicking. However, there's also this awareness that this space is being held. And even though I'm no longer aware of my body, I'm no longer aware of the people that were in the room with me, like your mind just instantly forgets all of those things, and you go to this other dimension and you kind of wonder like, oh my God, am I ever going back? Did I die? Like, what's going on here? There's just no memory of anything prior to that moment. And I'm kind of freaking out in that moment because there is this part of me that knows I've left something, like I kind of want to go back to something, but also experiencing everything that is right now. Because in that moment, it is a lot. It like almost instantly, for me, connected me back with my breath, because that was the only thing that I could grasp onto. That was the only thing that felt like a tangible thing that I could connect with, was just my breath. And because I had worked with DMT before, I had a rough idea of like, okay, I just need to connect with my breath. I just need to like slow down, just connect with my breath. And like I said, so even though there wasn't the awareness of the actual people on this 3D plane that were holding that space with me, I could feel or hear these like whispers of a presence. And I don't really know how best to explain it, but if you know, you know, but it's like this loving voice energy that is kind of talking to you, but like soothing you. So as I'm there telling myself, like, okay, I just need to like breathe, just connect with my breath, there's also this like very loving presence that's like, shh, like it's okay. Like it's okay, you're safe, everything is okay. Shh. And it's like, I don't know, calming you, or it was calming me at the same time. But it's not spoken in words so much as it's just a felt sense that there's something else there that's helping you relax. It's helping you calm down. It's encouraging you to bring your frequency and your harmony with the energy of the space. So when I came in there, because I was in like a bit of a state of panic, it was kind of shocking. I would have been, if you think of it in the sense of like the range of emotions, every emotion has its own vibration that it emits. So if when I came into that dimension, we'll call it, I was vibrating at the frequency of panic or fear, energy wants to find equilibrium. And so because my intention was to experience that unconditional love, it would have been my energy of fear and panic and this greater energy of love and harmony and oneness. And so naturally, that energy of love, harmony, oneness is going to want to bring what other energies are vibrating there up to that level rather than it coming down. But of course, there's going to be a bit of like middle ground that sort of happens. But I was very connected to this loving energy and feeling this peaceful, calming feeling. And so I allowed myself to just connect with this loving energy and just feel this soothing experience that was coming over me. And initially the vibrations, I don't know if you have ever seen an image of like the toroidal field. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but it's like that energy field that kind of goes in a donut shape around the human body, around the earth, around like every living thing. And the energy that I was imagining very much was going in that direction, but it felt like it was coming from me, like it was radiating from me. And the more I connected with my breath and began to soothe myself to come back to this loving vibration, it almost seemed like it switched. So the energy was no longer radiating from me, it was coming into me. And so everything felt almost like it was collapsing in on itself rather than expanding. And what was once very colorful and bright, as it was expanding, began to turn into a very dark, I don't know, like a dark energy. And I became very aware of the fact that I was the only presence in this universe as I was experiencing it in that moment. And as my mind was kind of turning in on myself, and I was like, my ego had started to kick in a little bit at that point, because usually with Bufo, when you're first blasted off, is how they call it, but your ego is immediately like stripped away, but slowly it will start to trickle back in. So at this point, I began to be more aware of my thinking mind. And the thinking mind was telling me, or I guess asking me, like, what am I supposed to do here? Because the ego wants to be doing. It wants to have a purpose. It wants to know that there's something to do to give it like that purpose. But really, as humans, our only purpose is to just be, and to just be love. Okay, so as my mind was turning in on myself, it actually started to become very scary. So at first, and I guess, so first it was fearful, and then I felt more at peace and felt a sense of that calmness as the energy of the space began to resonate with my body more. But then when it was turning inwards, I became very fearful because I felt alone. And as my mind was turning in on itself, it was becoming very dark, and I really, I wanted to break out of the space. I, was really starting to panic at that point, because I'm like, okay, this isn't comfortable. I don't like this. I want to get out of here. I want to get out of here. And I think at that point, someone told me that I screamed, but there was some kind of a release that happened. And for whatever reason, I opened my eyes, because at that point, my eyes were just closed the whole time. And I opened my eyes, and it immediately brought me back to the space. So I could see the people that were around me, and I was like, oh God, thank you. Thank you so much. Because when you are blasted off, like I said, there's that thought or the awareness that you're not where you were before, and you don't really know if you're going back. It's hard to differentiate between what's real and what is the dream. And so when I opened my eyes and I saw the people that I was in that space with, all I could really feel in my body was this huge, thank you, God, for bringing me back home, for giving me this life. And I was flooded with this feeling of gratitude, unlike anything that I had ever experienced before. And I think even before I opened my eyes, I had perhaps had the awareness that my thoughts were starting to turn a little dark. I was starting to panic. I was feeling really afraid. And I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole. So at that point, I think I had started saying thank you, because I know that bringing myself to a state of gratitude is most or more likely to bring me to the things that I want to experience in life. And so in that moment, I just started saying, like, thank you, thank you, thank you, over and over again. Like, thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you. I was feeling it, like just saying it with as much vigor and oomph and enthusiasm as I could to really feel that in my body. And then after I opened my eyes and I saw the people, and then it was like the real thank you hit. And I just started to laugh because I felt so relieved in that moment. And I was laughing these laughs that I swear it was like a joy I had never experienced in my life before. And I've taken mushrooms and I've gone on these like laughing sprees, as I'm sure other people who have had this like who have taken mushrooms may have experienced. But this was like a release of energy that felt to me like it had been trapped in there for years. It was like all of the childhood joy that I had suppressed in myself after like my cousin passed away, and I told myself like I can't be happy around all of these sad people, or after any breakup that I had experienced. It was like I could feel very strongly that this expression of joy, this expression of laughter wasn't just a regular expression, but it was truly releasing the energy that I had trapped in my body over the last 30 years of my life. Every time I told myself that it's not appropriate to laugh right now, I can't be silly right now, even though at heart we are all children. We all want to live joyful, playful, silly lives, but often our culture will tell us to suppress that it's not okay, that there's a time for seriousness and there's a time for play. And I just laughed and laughed and laughed, and I couldn't even stop. I was making the most like happy sounds that I have ever made in my life as I was feeling this energy be released. And I say that I was releasing energy because I've done a lot of work with emotions before, recognizing where they're stored in their body, how they're stored in the body, how to actually release them from the body, what it feels like when they are released from the body. We often think about, fear or anger or sadness being trapped or stored, or that we hold this energy in our body, but we don't always consider the fact that we also trap joy. We also trap excitement. We also have moments in our life when we tell ourselves like it's actually not okay to be happy right now. But that energy still goes somewhere, and if you don't express it, then it is still in your body, and not in a good way. This is usually when we create disease in our body. There's that disharmony that comes from this stuck energy that wants to be expressed, but we don't allow ourselves to express it. So in this ceremony, I was just like laughing and making so many happy sounds, and I just felt so much relief in that moment. And I just kept saying like, thank you, God, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I became so aware in that moment of what God actually was. It wasn't some dude up in the clouds. God, for me, in that moment, was the energy of love, the energy of pleasure. And the message that I got so strongly was that life, the purpose of life, is to experience pleasure in the fullest way that we can. That's it. At least that's the purpose of my life. Maybe you have a different message or awareness for yourself. But in that moment, that was the message that I got so strongly, was that for me, the only thing I have to do in this life is experience pleasure to the best of my ability, to experience it fully and completely throughout my entire body, to allow God to flow through me. Because God is the energy of pleasure. God is the energy of love and joy. And when we are fully living our purpose, we are automatically in that energy. It's the same energy of flow, that we just feel so in the flow that we forget time, we forget space, we forget all of the problems of the world, and we just experience the joy and the feeling of what is. It's the present moment. And that's all we're here to experience. When I talked to people afterwards about my Bufo experience, I often would tell them that it was the most loving experience that I had ever had in my life. And it was also the most terrifying. It gave me the awareness that life is just an experience, that every moment is just an experience, and how you experience that experience is completely up to you. But that is the purpose of life, to just experience every experience that you can possibly experience, because there are so many out there to experience. And the more joyful, the more loving, the more peaceful that you can allow those experiences to be, the more harmonious you will be in your life, in your body, in your relationships. And that's all there is. Life isn't about achieving things. It's about being in the experience, being in the present moment, the energy of love and joy, and offering that gift to the world. If that is something that you experience by producing something, creating something, then that is a beautiful thing too. But you don't need to do those things to have that loving feeling in your body. The Bufo experience, I know I'm saying this word a lot, but it was just, the other aspect that came to me so clearly is that God is something that is outside of me. It's that energy, but I am also the creator of that reality. Therefore, God is also within me in the sense that I am God. That we are God as the collective. We create God as God created us in His image. Although, from my understanding, God is actually a woman. The creator. We are here to create that. That is what gives us that sense of purpose. And depending on where our thoughts go, how we are aligned with this energy of pleasure, we are either going to create heaven or we are going to create hell. And it was so beautiful for me to recognize in that the vision of the energy turning in on me, and I felt trapped. It was like a prison. But that for me was the awareness that in my life I was actually creating a prison for myself. That I wasn't experiencing the joy and the pleasure that I really wanted to be experiencing because I was afraid to be judged. I was afraid to put myself out there. I was afraid to be seen and heard in ways that had caused me pain in the past. Yet that pleasure that was released, I could not help but understand that that was always available to me, that energy is always available to me. It's just a matter of Am I willing to do what it takes to experience that pleasure despite the fear, despite the potential rejection or judgments? We often come into this world as a society put in these boxes. This is how we are supposed to behave. This is what we're supposed to say. This is what we need to do in order to be accepted by society. But your job is not to be accepted by society. Your job is to live your life to the fullest. To be, to do, to have everything that you really want. Because in the eyes of God, everything that you want, truly, if it comes from your heart, it is for your highest good and the highest good of all. Because it does not do anyone any good for you to play small, for you to dim your shine, your light, your gifts in the name of what? Not offending anyone? Let them be offended. There's always someone who is going to be offended. There's always someone who won't understand you, and that is okay. After having this experience, I was forced to take a real look at my life and the way that I was living my life, and recognizing that the prison that I had created was not the heaven that I desired. And I later came to the realization and awareness that that prison was very much formed around addiction for me in my life. That at the time I was smoking weed every day. I was eating junk food on a regular basis. I was in a very toxic relationship, something called a trauma bond, which is also a form of addiction. And I had to take a very clear look at what my life actually was and what I wanted my life to be. After having experienced this feeling of true unconditional love, it brought to the surface all of those things that were playing out in my life that did not resonate with that frequency, as terrifying as it was to look at. The other very interesting thing that it brought to my awareness has to do with attachment styles. And I've known for a while that my attachment style is more on the avoidant spectrum. And I could talk about, so the three types of attachment is that there's secure attachment, anxious attachment, and avoidant attachment. And with avoidantly attached individuals, they often get very overwhelmed by a feeling of love, that they want to feel close and connected to other people, but that experience of love often feels very engulfing. That there's a fear that if I let someone get too close, they are going to essentially engulf me, that they are going to, why is this word not coming to me right now? It's suffocate. It's going to suffocate me. That love, in a sense, will suffocate who I am. And this often played out in my relationships because I would completely abandon myself for the other person. I would put their needs first. I would stop doing things that I love to do in the name of being in a relationship or doing something for this other person. That I would almost always abandon myself. And that was very clearly depicted for me in this Bufo ceremony where I was receiving all of this love, but rather than feeling like I deserved it or I was worthy of it, it drew attention to that core belief inside of me that told me I was not enough, that I don't deserve this, that this is actually scary, that this is something to be feared, that this is not a good thing. And so since that time and since having that awareness, I had to take a real hard look at the way I viewed myself, how much I loved myself, how much I was actually allowing God into my life, what I was, or how I was showing up in my relationships, what were the addictive behaviors that I was participating in as a way of filling this void that I had been telling myself that I am not enough. But even though on a higher level, I'm aware that I am enough, we are all enough, there's nothing that anyone needs to do to be enough, we are just enough as we are. But I knew and I could see very clearly that I was filling this hole, filling it with weed and junk food and relationships that I didn't fully feel connected to, whether it's romantically or friendships. And so after that ceremony, I started to really look at my life, but really start to align my life. I started going to a recovery program, and I'm now almost 9 months sober from smoking weed. I haven't really drank in that time anyway, but I was never that much of a drinker anyway. Gone through the 12 steps with a sponsor. I am no longer in the very toxic relationship that I was in before. And I'm doing a lot of inner child work, connecting with that part of myself that I had been subconsciously rejecting for so long. I'm taking more action and making videos and speaking up and doing the things that really do help me to feel pleasure in my life. And I'm going to say this now because it's something that has been on my plate for a while, but even just singing and expressing myself musically is another thing that I know that is where that pleasure is coming from for me, and that's something that I'm holding myself accountable to doing more often and more regularly, whether it's on a video or just like in front of friends or family. And if nothing else from this message, and I really should have said this at the beginning, but as a slight disclosure, that nothing that I've said here today, nothing that you've heard here today, is actually about me. This is a story of your life, your experiences, and how you choose to show up on a daily basis. That your life can be the heaven or the hell that you create it as, depending on how much you are willing to live your life fully and with pleasure. And when I say pleasure, I realize that there is this real confusion around what that actually means, and I've experienced it in my own past as I was smoking weed and eating junk food and seeking out short-term relationships, having one-night stands, or having these shorter experiences of pleasure. But what I recognized was that that wasn't real pleasure. It's like a pseudo pleasure. That short-term game never actually leads to the full experience of pleasure that we came here to feel, to share. Have you ever been in a room with someone who is just so free to be themselves, so authentic, so joyful? It is the most intoxicating experience, and there doesn't need to be any drugs involved. That when a person is willing to show up completely as themselves, that is the most pleasurable experience that they or you could ever possibly have. That is what we came here to experience, but you won't get that from smoking weed or drinking alcohol or watching TV every night. It comes from taking those consistent action steps towards your goals, doing that thing that is completely terrifying to you, but you know in your heart that that is what you want to do. that is where your true pleasure will come from. That is where that true joy is going to come from. And that is what you came here to experience. But in order to experience that, you have to let go of all of the things, the short-term pleasures that are stopping you from experiencing that. And this is where self-discipline comes in. This is where we need to develop that loving relationship with ourselves, our inner child, that part of us that wants and seeks that instant gratification. Because very seldom will that instant gratification lead you to the full capacity of joy. If nothing else from this video today, I hope that you gained an awareness and an experience of what you really want for yourself in this life. And that from this, you give yourself permission to want what you really want. Because that want isn't going to go anywhere, and it doesn't matter how much weed you smoke or how much you drink or how many cigarettes you have or how many one-night stands you have. Nothing is going to give you that full experience of pleasure, of excitement, of joy, like taking action towards that thing that scares you. Nothing is going to bring you closer to the experience of God, like living out your purpose. Nothing is going to allow you to feel that harmony, that unity, that oneness that you came here to have and to create in your life, like living out your purpose. Because I truly believe that your authentic self, your true self, is a self of unity and love and acceptance, and recognizing that every human that you see is really just a reflection of you. And that every time you get triggered or any time pain comes to the surface, that it's just coming to the surface so that you can heal it. That the problems in your life are showing up for you, not to you. You have everything that you need right now. And we are all just waiting. We are all here to support you, all here to love you in any way that you need, as long as you are willing to ask and trust and have faith that you are loved, you are supported. The big takeaway for me from that ceremony was just the daily reminder to connect to God, the daily reminder to connect to gratitude, to love as much as I possibly can. And let me tell you, it's not been easy. Sometimes it seemed a lot easier to be happy when I was high, or when I was just floating through life doing a job that didn't really feel aligned for me, that didn't feel like I was using my gifts and my talents in the ways that I wanted to. But as I've been putting these pieces together, I'm starting to reconnect with the wholeness that I am. I don't feel like this scattered shell of a human anymore, so much as I feel like a being who is in the process of becoming who I am meant to be, the love that I am meant to be in this world, and that you are meant to be as well. I just want to check in for a second. it's a really scary awareness for me to recognize that in my life, I want to be a spiritual teacher. I want to help people connect to God. I want to help people connect with their purpose. I want to help people connect with love. But in order to do so, I need to be a pioneer in my own way. I need to love myself enough to give myself permission to experience that first, to be the change that I want to be in the world, and to show the world what is possible, to show myself what is possible. Because really, it's not about changing the world, it's just about changing myself. Just as your life isn't about changing anyone else but you. By looking at all of the things that you don't want to look at and loving them to the best ability that you have. So with that, my brothers and sisters, I encourage you to ask yourself this question of what is one thing, or maybe even 5 things, if you were to write them down, that if you were living your life more purposefully today, even 5% more purposefully, what would you be doing differently? And just write those things down and encourage yourself to take action towards those things. For me, I would be playing music, I would be singing, I would be making this video, I would be allowing myself to just be silly and joyful. I would be making videos regularly, I would eat healthfully, I would probably not be drinking caffeine. But what's different for me is going to be different for you. So just ask yourself, if I was living 5% more purposefully today, what are 5 things that I would be doing differently? All right, beautiful souls, brothers and sisters, I thank you for your light, your awareness, your love, your attention, your patience with yourself, with me, to watch this video. Whatever guided you to stick through this here today, I thank you. And I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. What is one takeaway that you got from this video, and what is one action step that you are going to do as a result of an insight that you had from this video? I wish you much peace and much love along your journey, fellow travelers. Namaste.